Welcome to the Pewtercast. This is bonus content number 7, Mudbloods and Murmers. I am Brent Allen, your host. Welcome, Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, to a bonus content episode. Now, it occurs to me, it's been rather a long time since we've had a bonus content episode. And so if you're new to the podcast, we've got tons and tons and tons of new listeners who have been just pouring in, who have been subscribing, especially since the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been on this great winning trajectory in the last bunch of weeks. So for those of you guys, I want to say welcome. Bonus content episodes are something that is designed for where here we are in a podcast about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is kind of the fandom that we all share. Bonus content gives us an opportunity to talk about other fandoms that we may also have in common that aren't really having anything to do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or maybe something special comes out, a bit of news. It gives us an avenue to be able to talk about it where it doesn't really fit into the main show. So that said, I've got a very fun bonus content episode planned for you guys today, and I've got a couple of guests with me here. They are from another podcast. Now, if you've been listening for the last month, you know that the Audible recommendation that we've been having has really been the entire Harry Potter series. Jim Dale is a fantastic reader of the series. You can go over there. You go to audibletrial.com/thepewtercast. They'll give you a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial. You guys can check it out. And in doing so, you can be following along. Now, I am personally going through the Harry Potter series right now, and I am doing it with the two guys who are going to be our guests. They are from a podcast called Tales from Godric's Hollow. I have Josh Brown, Matt Sonnenberg here with us to talk about some stuff for this bonus content episode. But Josh, Matt, welcome to the show, my friends.
Thanks for having us, Brent, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun show, I think.
Yeah, it should be very fun. Now, you guys have a very unique approach to your podcast. It's a Harry Potter podcast. And, Matt, I think you have done the impossible in what you have found in Josh. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about your show and your podcast and what you guys have going on over there?
Sure. So I've known Matt here for a couple of years now, and he has been quietly, mostly, but sometimes very out loud about how angry he is about my lack of knowledge or caring about the Harry Potter series. When he found out that I had never read any of the books, had never seen the movies, had ever bothered to even just glimpse into the franchise to see if it was something for me, he just about lost it. And he was pestering me and just trying to, very subtly at first, get me into it in some way, shape, or form, and to no avail. I'm very stubborn. I'm stuck in my ways, and it was at PAX East, a video game conference that we went to in Boston in March, where we started talking about Harry Potter again, and I haphazardly threw out the suggestion to Matt that if he wanted me to do something as time-consuming such as read the Harry Potter series or even watch the films, it was going to need to be incorporated into a podcast because I love podcasting. I have several different podcasts, and that's where I spend a lot of my free time. So I kind of threw that out there thinking there's no way this guy's going to go for it. Mm-hmm. And the light bulb went on above Matt's head right there, and the rest is kind of history, right, Matt?
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it. It all started really on, not to drag too many podcasts into this, but one of your other podcasts, Toys for Games, where you had me on as a guest, and like I kept making Harry Potter references, and I could just tell you're sitting there and it's like nodding along, even though I can't actually see you, and your other co-host Jason, it's like I know he's read them. He's as big a fan as I am, and he actually got them. And I'm like, this would be so much better if you were getting these references. And so that's really what got me started on trying to get you into Harry Potter somehow. But yeah, it's come a long way, and we've been doing podcasts now for, what is it, 3 months or so?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we set it up as Matt being my Sherpa through the Harry Potter franchise. He's read the books backwards and forwards dozens of times, seen the films probably more times than he could possibly count, and he is guiding me through the books and the films 1 week at a time. We read a couple chapters. We kind of have it like a book club style format where we encourage the listening audience to read along with us, which is kind of difficult because only reading 2 chapters a week for Harry Potter fans is pretty much impossible, I'm realizing. So it's tough for everybody, especially for Matt. But we wanted to slow it down to allow me to ingest as much of it as possible. Like I said, it's like 2 chapters a week pretty much, and we're going through the books one by one. At the end of each book, we take a break and we watch the film that corresponds with the book that we just read. And there was definitely a time at the beginning where I wasn't quite sure I was going to make it through all 7 books. Like, if forced to, I was going to do it for Matt's sake because I didn't want to disappoint him and let him down because he put so much work and effort into getting the podcast started and getting me into it in the first place. But I only bought the first book like to start. I didn't buy the whole set. I wasn't committing myself to the whole thing if it went off, into a side of a mountain or something like that. But about halfway through the book is when it kind of started clicking for me, and I realized, yeah, this is something I definitely want to know more about and keep going with it. So.
Yeah, I can remember listening to those early episodes, Josh, and you were very non-committal to the whole thing.
Yeah.
You were overly specific about, I'm not sure if we're going to do the whole thing, right. But it's and I remember you reading the first couple of chapters and being like, okay, yeah, let's read the next ones. All right, fine. I'll stay through the rest of this book. Okay, I'm not committing to anything. We'll see what happens. Yeah. And then by the time you got to the end of that first book and everything happened, you're like, I'm going through the whole series. We're going to be here for 4 years or however long this takes.
Yeah, I have to admit that the 2 chapters a week initially was just not to overwhelm you because that was the thing. I didn't want to force you to read half the book or the entire book and then we'll talk about it. But it was just like, okay, just give me 2 chapters. We'll talk about that. But yeah, now we're finding 2 chapters almost gives us too much content to talk about because you're so interested in it and you just want to pull apart every little bit. And it's great. The audience, as far as I can tell, is loving it. They love to see your reactions to it. A first-timer, because most of us that are listening have already read it at least once or at least seen the movies or done something. And so we have a history with this world, and it's not until they get to see it from another perspective again, Josh's perspective, that it really gets them into it again. And we get it every week. People saying that we're bringing up things they have never thought about.
Yeah, and that I think that's one of the things that I know I personally love is Matt. It's kind of like for those of us who are fans of the series, we've been through the series, we've read the books, we've watched the movies, however many times we've gone through each. You play around on Pottermore and you do all the stuff that I don't care how old you are. If you've fallen in love with the series, you just do that kind of stuff. It's like we all have this big gigantic collective secret from Josh. and we're watching him with grins on our faces and listening to him freak out about a denoming a garden and saying this better be in the movie, and we're all going, that which Josh, I know you were so disappointed when that scene didn't come out in the film.
It's kind of like the Truman Show where everybody's in on it and I don't feel like I'm starting to put it together, but like there's still like this overarching big secret that everybody has that just waiting for it. Like,
but yeah, it's just when you think you have it figured out, though, there's always another twist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Matt, I mean, I hate people that just give away spoilers to people who don't need the spoilers yet. And you have been a master at holding your tongue and just letting it go and allowing Josh to kind of go through all this. And really, as people who have been through these books, it's helping us to relive those moments as well. For what we're doing now for your all's podcast. Just real quick before we move on, because I want to move on because for my fans, the fans who have tuned into this, we're not just talking about Harry Potter. There is actually something that Matt and Josh did on their show. We'll talk about it in just a second. That really relates to football, and that's why I wanted to bring them on. But before we move on, how can people find you guys? Subscribe to you. Where can they find you on Twitter? What can they do if they want to kind of join in on what's going on with Tales from Godric's Hollow?
The podcast can be found on iTunes. Just type in Tales from Godric's Hollow. It's also on Stitcher and Google Play. And on Twitter, you could follow us at Tales from GH. So that's the easiest way. Then our website is just talesfromgodricshollow.com.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, you're not too late to get in. They've just started book number 3. And the first couple of books, you can go back and listen and just catch up. And I am personally listening and following along. I am doing it on the audiobook. So I'll listen to the 2 chapters and then, jump into the podcast and that it's a break. It's another fandom. And I as I said, I imagine that lots of my fellow Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans also might possibly be Harry Potter fans, especially given the fact that they're in Florida. Universal Studios is just down the road, like 30, 45 minutes, where they have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter right there. So now you guys have a bonus content episode-esque thing built into your show as well called Butterbeer Banter. And I believe it was the first one you guys did. I might be wrong.
Correct.
You can correct me. You looked at a Netflix documentary called Mudbloods. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Mudbloods is about and how that worked?
Matt, I think you should explain this one since you turned me on to it.
It's true. This is something I had watched probably a couple years ago, actually, at least a year ago, before I actually knew I was going to be doing a podcast. It's a documentary called Mudbloods that follows around the UCLA Quidditch team as they journey to the Quidditch World Cup. And yes, I'm not making all this up. It's a real thing. They really have. It's a fully functional college sport. It's only gotten bigger ever since the documentary. I'm not saying the documentary had something to do with it. It was just on the rise at that point. And there is a Quidditch World Cup. They have hundreds of teams that come to this thing, and so it's a huge deal that not many people know about. But they have managed to bring Quidditch, the wizard sport that we all know and love, into the real world.
Yeah, the documentary follows around the team from UCLA who kind of was partly responsible for spearheading it in a major collegiate way, and especially on the West Coast. And it's co-ed, which is like the best thing that you could possibly imagine as far as collegiate sports is concerned. Just having that accessibility to anybody, and fascinating doc. When Matt recommended it to me, I'm like, there's no way you're going to get me to care about this documentary about some kids pretending to fly around on a broom and play this game that, at this point, I'm still questioning whether or not I care about Quidditch, because in the first book, I wasn't sold. I wasn't sold on it being something I cared about. But this documentary definitely turned things around for me as far as Quidditch as a fictional sport and Quidditch as a actual physical real life sport.
Yeah. And it's one of those, for anyone who reads the books and goes through them and has the journey through Quidditch, kind of that Harry Potter does. You sit there and you'll always think, man, what if this was a real sport? Because it feels so real the way it's described, and it seems like this would just be a really fun sport to play. So the fact that people brought this out into quote unquote the real world, and the thing that was so intriguing to me as I'm watching this is I'm looking at it going, okay, these are a bunch of nerds that are playing this thing. Oh, no, wait. These guys are actually getting hit. These guys are tackling people. They're hitting people. And the way it was described by somebody, by a guy named Alex Benepe, who's the intercollegiate commissioner for the International Quidditch Association, which apparently that's now a thing. He said when he's trying to describe it, he just says it's a full contact cross between dodgeball and rugby. It's co-ed, it's 7-on-7, and it's basically an intramural sport. For real college campuses. Like, they really do this. And, as you mentioned, there's the Quidditch World Cup that they bring all these teams from the various schools, and you've got the UCLA Bruins and the UNC Tar Heels and the Kentucky Wildcats, and you've got the Penn State Nittany Lions, and you've got these schools with their teams and their mascots actually represented at this Quidditch World Cup. And that's why I wanted to kind of come in and look at this, to take a look with you guys as this is like a real game. Like this, what is this game about? How does it work? Now, I'm sure that lots of people are out there trying to think in their head, like, how could this actually work? Because as a football player myself, I was really impressed watching this, just how athletic these guys had to be, how hard hitting this is, and how violent this sport is. But you're also watching it, seeing these guys are doing the same thing that football players do. They're watching game film. They're analyzing it. They're coming up with plays. They're seeing how their opponents are doing stuff. They're calling different things, and it's turned into a really, legit intramural sport. And the big thought I was thinking of as I was watching people kind of make fun of them was, one, I want to play this. I don't care if I'm playing football or not. I want to go play this game. And this is how new sports are created. Way back when James Naismith stuck a peach basket up on a wall and said, let's throw a basket through that. Who knew that would turn into the NBA, 100 years later? So that's what I want to do. But let's take a moment. I want to pause. And for anyone out there who might be wondering, how the heck do you translate Quidditch to the real world? They really explain for us in the documentary how the Quidditch rules work. So I want to play that little clip and for everyone, so they can just know how the things translate. So let's take a listen to that right now.
The books, the movies rules. Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's just adapted from that. So the white bands are the chasers, the black bands are the beaters, and the green bands are the keeper. There are two ways to score points in Quidditch. The first way to score is for the chaser to get the quaffle, the volleyball, through one of the three hoops. You can score through any hoop from either side, it doesn't matter. Each time you get the quaffle through the hoops, you get 10 points. It is a full contact sport, so you're allowed to do one-handed tackles, but anything from behind or over the shoulder is not allowed. So you can use your body to defend, but there's also the bludgers, the red dodgeballs. The beaters use the bludgers to knock people off their brooms. If you get hit by a bludger, you're out of play until you go back and touch one of your own hoops. The green bands are the keepers. The keeper's job is to protect the hoops. If the keeper gets the quaffle in their keeper zone, your opponent's attack ends. When the keeper's outside of the keeper zone, they follow the same rules as the chasers. The other way to score is to get the snitch. If you get the snitch, you get 30 points. In our game, the snitch is a person with a tennis ball and a sock hanging out of the back of their pants. They don't belong to either team, and they can pretty much do anything or go anywhere they want. We limit the snitch to stay on campus, and they have to return to the field after a set amount of time, but other than that, the snitch has no rules. They can do whatever they want, and they usually do. It's the seeker's job to grab the tennis ball without touching the person. This is actually very hard in Quidditch because the snitch is the only person who doesn't have to have a broom between their legs. So all the players, except the snitch, are basically playing a one-handed game. Gameplay doesn't stop unless there's an injury, and there are no timeouts or halves and no time limit to the game. The only way to end the game is to get the snitch. Once the snitch is caught, whichever team has the most points wins the game. 100 to 80, so wristbands
All right. Well, that is pretty much the rules of how Quidditch gets translated out, with little things that you may have picked up on, like, yes, they are actually running around with brooms between their legs. Like that's a real thing. The way they work the snitch is, you can't have a little ball just flying around. They put a tennis ball in a sock and kind of stick it out the back of somebody's pants. But really, it looks more like a flag football type of thing. You know,
Yeah.
And the goal is to run around and grab the sock with the tennis ball in it without touching the guy, the person that has the snitch. So guys, let me toss this over to you. When you guys let's just look at the game in and of itself, because on the one hand, you know, let's be honest, it does look a little silly, you know, but it also looks like a legit sport. You know, if you really stop and take a look at it, what are your all's thoughts on this whole idea? You know, as people who are kind of resident experts in Harry Potter these days, what are your thoughts on playing this game and if you would want to, just kind of what are you guys thinking about this?
For me, as far as like it looking too silly or anything like that, if the teams were to be equipped with like, you know, corresponding gear that looked the part, you know, and looked professional or somewhat professional, I think a lot of the silliness would kind of go away. You know, you see kids running around with like duct tape brooms and, you know, like tennis balls, and it looks very thrown together, very backyard wrestling type of scenario here. But you know, you look at like lacrosse or frisbee golf, or, you know, the wide range of sports and activities that you could do. Most of it looks pretty goofy when it comes down to it. I mean, even flag football to a you know, outside observer doesn't look like the same football you would watch on Sundays. You know, it's a little bit more playful, and I think this type of Quidditch kind of goes along with that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, to people that don't get it, yeah, it's kind of, you know, weird seeing people run around with brooms between their legs, but is that much different than a scrum during a rugby match where there's just you know, bodies piled on top of each other for what seems like forever, doing nothing really? Like it's all perspective, you know.
I think the biggest thing for me is where people get to witness these things. So in the film in particular, they say like the other jocks on campus, the other athletes on campus are the ones who tend to make fun of them the most, because it's like, oh yeah, that's not a real sport. But that's because they're just seeing them like practice, and in practice they don't always go full contact. They don't always have their uniforms on, and so yeah, you see a bunch of kids running around with brooms between their legs. I think that's the key right there, is the broom between the legs. Like that just doesn't make sense to any other athlete. That it's just weird. It's nerdy. That's why we as Harry Potter fans love it. And like you expressed yourself, Brent, that it kind of seemed like something you would want to play, even though you have played football, but you are also a Harry Potter fan.
Yeah.
And that's something they mentioned too. It's like it's just a great group activity that all Harry Potter fans can get together and do. It's something that they all enjoy, no matter if they're that good at it or not. I mean, it's obviously getting to a point now in the collegiate level where there will probably someday, if there's not already, be tryouts for it. They're going to have to cut people. But for the most part, it's just something that Harry Potter fans are going to enjoy more than anybody else, because they understand where it comes from.
Yeah, you know, and I was watching it. Actually, I rewatched it earlier today, just kind of in preparation for this. And one of the things I was noticing, I'm an offensive lineman, which just means I'm a big old fatty. And I was struck by the idea that as I looked at the different players, like there were so many different body types and so many different types of people playing this. Like some of these guys looked like they were legit in shape athletes. Some of these guys were not, you know, and they weren't all guys. There were lots of girls, you know, and there's even one girl who says, I actually took a year off so I could go play softball, but I didn't really like it. So I came off of that quote unquote real sport and came over and to come back and play Quidditch because I really like what's going on here. So, you know, I love seeing whenever you get a sport where you can have multiple body shapes and body types to be able to participate into something.
Yeah, it's very inclusive to anybody that wants to participate. You go out there having no experience, and you may not be the best at it. Like you may need to work on your cardio a little bit or whatever the case is, but there's still a spot for you to go out there and have fun and play. And like Matt said, eventually, a lot of schools are going to have to do tryouts because they're going to have so many people. They'll have too many people to field a team, so they'll have to make cuts, and that's when it starts getting less inclusive to everybody, because then you are picking the best of the best athletes. But that's also how little games and activities like this actually start to become sports, is when the athletes start to come out and to dominate whatever the game is. So
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do to get people on board is to not just show them a practice, is to show them an actual competitive game. Because that's where it really comes out that, yes, this is a sport. Yes, this is something people care about. And yes, they are athletes. Like I said, the full contact nature of it, when you're comparing anything to rugby, that's one of the roughest sports I know, because it's full contact, no pads. It's that much rougher than many of the sports that are out there today.
Which I got to tell you, as an old football player, there's nothing like strapping on the pads and putting on the uniform and running out onto a field. But there's something entirely different when you get together with your friends and you're playing in like some sort of a reservoir ditch, or you're in somebody's backyard, or you're out somewhere and you're playing full contact football, but you're not wearing pads. And there's a part of me that I always remember coming off of that going, why do we wear pads like in the game? Because this was just fine, and this was so much more fun to play without pads, and because these guys are going really full contact. I mean, like I don't know that I can express just how hard some of these people were getting hit. And there was even an injury that they highlighted, but there I didn't see any head injuries or concussions or anything like that, like we see a lot of in the NFL. But another thing that struck me, as we said, this documentary is about the journey from the UCLA team to go to the Quidditch World Cup, which that year happened to be in New York. Now, I've since done a little bit of research, and the Quidditch World Cup moves around from place to place to place. In fact, I was so upset because the Quidditch World Cup this last year was just 45 minutes down the road from me. And I totally would have loved to go, but I mean, it was right there, and I was like, oh, I could have gone if I'd known. But when you it also kind of has like a subplot, like a B plot of following the guys that are putting together the World Cup and kind of maybe some of the struggles just to put that event on. And one of the things you catch out of that is the sheer amount of money that is changing hands to put something like this on. Like they were talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like for the team, just the team from UCLA to go, they were going to spend $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And they said they had something like 95 teams participating and a couple hundreds of thousands. And you start talking about that kind of money, like that's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they even said that year they had international teams. It isn't just in the U.S. Yes, most of the competition takes place in the U.S., but they have international reach already.
That's crazy. And that's something else. And so you imagine UCLA spending $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. What are these international teams paying to fly in and to go through the visa process? And that's some serious commitment to. A game that I said not but 10 minutes ago was kind of silly.
Right. Yep.
And like as a football, like, so I'm looking at this in terms of like seeing an NFL game, the amount of merchandising that could be happening. Like if I'm the WB, the studio that owns the Harry Potter stuff, I would be sponsoring the heck out of that event. And I would have booths set up every 10 feet selling movies and merchandise and wands and robes and banners and, you name it, anything you can slap a Harry Potter anything on. But I mean, that's something where all of a sudden now you're not just talking about having cuts on these teams, but what happens when you start moving into like salary cap situations?
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that's something else.
Well, speaking of money, like especially, for broke college students, like this was very easy for them to grab random tennis balls and old brooms that they found to kind of make this happen. Like they made their own rings. It's a very easy sport to kind of set up on a very strict budget. But going past that, especially into the international level, if this is to grow, one of the biggest things is being able to be played and enjoyed by countries that aren't as wealthy as the United States or other European countries. You look at soccer. Soccer is the most played sport in the entire world. And why is that? Because all you need is a ball to kick around, and you could use anything for a goal. Anybody out there, despite your level of income, it could play that. And Quidditch has that ability to where all you need is some balls. It doesn't even matter, like what you use. You could kind of let your imagination go for it, and as long as you have like a stick, you don't need a broom per se. You just need something to between your legs to hold on to prevent you from using your second hand. Essentially, this is super easy to set up in countries and that don't have the financial means to buy equipment.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about how they actually put this thing together. If you know Quidditch, you know that there's 3 balls. There's a quaffle, there's a bludger, and then there's a snitch. And we already talked about the snitch. It's a tennis ball and a sock that kind of works like a football flag hanging out the back of somebody's belt. The quaffle is just a volleyball. Yeah, it's nothing more than a volleyball. And the bludgers are just dodgeballs. Just the rubber gymnasium dodgeballs, and they won't kill you if they hit you in the face. So you have that. They really are running around on brooms. Now these are like the little short brooms, like if you see the people who might work custodial at a theme park or something, they're not super big. It's not what I'm sweeping my kitchen with.
Right.
Whether that, but then like the hoops, so they made hoops just out of, it wasn't even PVC pipe. I don't know what it was. It looked like a hula hoop and a stick, honestly, held together by duct tape.
Yep. A lot of duct tape. They said that's what they said. Duct tape is their best friend. Keep those hoops together and keep their brooms together. It works. Yeah,
and you'd watch these guys they would demolish these hoops as part of playing the game. Somebody would get tackled into the hoop, and you go, oh well, that's why they have duct tape right there to do that. Well, let's. I want to transition into even just these guys talking about how they want to take it seriously. And that's kind of what we're circling around here is what does it take to take seriously. So let's take a minute. One more clip from the movie where just some of the guys are talking about what it actually means to them, like personally, and what it takes. So let's listen to that real quick.
Right now we want to be taken seriously. And it's hard to be taken seriously when you're seen as just a bunch of geeks. But I honestly think that there is the happy medium. Asher and I are proof of that, You just have to interact with Quidditch on that athletic level to have that understanding of it.
The people who don't really understand that this is not a joke is the other athletes on campus. Those are the people who really just don't understand.
But that's the deal, is if you're the type of person who comes in already thinking, hey, this is a nerd sport, what are these kids doing? I'm not going to take this seriously. It takes actually playing the game and taking the time to learn it, to really accept it as a sport.
Let go of your bludger and catch.
Yeah, so what they just said there is that in order to take it seriously, it takes actually playing it and feeling the impact and feeling what it is to actually begin to take it seriously. And that most of the people that downgraded are, as we have kind of circled around here, are the people who are actual athletes on campus. But it just takes them getting involved with that. So, well, guys, I want to kind of transition. We've kind of danced around this other topic before we kind of get out of here. Is what would it take for this to become a real sport? Like, what are the little things that would maybe need to change about the sport? In order for it, and I think before we do that, let's actually just ask the question: should we change it at all? Like, is it something that we should change at all? What do you think,
Matt?
I think I think it's something that they've gotten pretty close. One of the major changes that need to happen from Quidditch in the book to real life to make it applicable is something they've already done, and that's in changing the point value of the snitch, because that was the biggest gripe I've always heard about. The snitch makes no sense. It ends the game. It always guarantees a victory, and they changed that point value, and it makes it a whole different game.
Yeah, for the best. I mean, that was my biggest gripe. Reading about Quidditch in the Harry Potter franchise was, you catch the snitch, it's 150 points. That's pretty much an automatic win. So it kind of devalued the entire match up until that point. Whereas this real life Quidditch that's being played now, there is a bonus value to catching the snitch. It does end the game, which I do like, because you're not tied to a set time or anything like that, like most traditional sports. It's kind of reimagining how to end a game of sorts. But it doesn't. It's not the end all be all. The team that catches the snitch is going to win, guaranteed 99.9% of the time. It's more of a strategy. If you're behind by more points than the snitch gives you, you're not trying to catch it. You're more trying to keep the other team from catching it. So there is a lot more strategy involved, which I appreciate as a fan of the traditional sports. I like that strategy aspect of it.
And that strategy comes into play because of how much more visible the snitch is. Because the snitch isn't just a tiny little ball that you can hardly see. You really have to be looking for. It's a person.
Right.
It's a person running around. You can't miss them. They're dressed in bright yellow. So that's what brings that strategy into place. It's not because in Harry Potter Quidditch, I need another term for that now. But it all came down to who can see it first, because they're probably going to catch it first.
Yeah, and that, I mean, you look at something like that, Josh, to what you were talking about the strategy. We actually even saw that in the movie. One of I think it was the second or third game that they were playing at the World Cup was, the UCLA team was down. They were down by 40 points or something, and they scored and they got to within 20. And up to that point, you saw their seeker basically tackling the other team's seeker to get to stop them from catching the snitch. And then all of a sudden, when they got within 20, keep in mind the snitch was worth 30 in this form of Quidditch. That's when the coach started yelling, "All right, get the snitch, get the snitch, get the snitch!" Right. And all of a sudden, then it was just a race to see who could grab the flag, the tennis ball.
As far as changing something go, speaking of the snitch, it needs to be a little bit more regulated. Right now they play it to where the snitch could go anywhere on campus. Right. They're talking about finding the snitch up in a tree or in the bathroom, or there doesn't seem to be a lot of limits to it. And I understand that part of it, because they are trying to be as authentic to the Harry Potter franchise version of Quidditch as possible. But if you're going to make it more mainstream, you do have to kind of tighten those regulations a little bit as far as the snitch is concerned. You can't just have, if this was to be played, in a football stadium, essentially, they're having their World Cup, a la what the Super Bowl does, the NFL, and hundreds of thousands of people are sitting here watching. You can't have this one guy dressed in yellow just running through the stands like a madman and hiding under bleachers, and there needs to be some sort of agreed upon designation as far as the boundaries of the snitch is concerned. I think that's one very important rule that needs to be tightened up a little bit.
I know I kind of now have a picture in my head of a Quidditch player running through the stands, and just as he runs past him, somebody pushes down a newspaper that they were reading, and it's the guy in the snitch, and he takes off running the opposite direction. I'm going to leave an empty seat right next to me, or he's going to sit on my lap, because he probably could do that. I think that's true. And speaking about regulation, I think and this to me would be a very easy thing if some company wanted to do it, and all I'm going to require is royalties from here on out. Is you've got to get real balls. Like there's no reason to use a volleyball and a dodgeball and a tennis ball. Like you can actually manufacture a quaffle, and it doesn't have to be the one from the movie, but like you could manufacture these things to actually be. You look at a basketball, it's a basketball. You know what sport it's for. You look at a volleyball, you look at a soccer ball, you look at these balls, you know what they're for. To actually come up and design, what the quaffle looks like. To come up and design what, a bludger looks like. And you could use maybe even the movie version of that. But I think that's one thing. The big thing, though, the big thing to me, though, that I think we have to talk about is the brooms. Because the whole, when I talk about the silliness, I think the silly factor to me comes in watching these guys run around with the broom, between their legs. Like that's the thing that just kind of makes you go, okay, I don't know about that. And you're watching some of these guys like fall down, and they're sorry, ladies, they're very clearly racking themselves in the nuts. Like that's just dangerous for all kinds of reasons. But but we also find out that using the brooms serves a purpose. Right. Yep. It helps heighten the difficulty level of the game, and that it means everybody's really just a single-handed player. It's a one-handed game. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, should if we were to legitimize this, do we lose the brooms? Do we do something else in place of the brooms? Do we just make it a two-handed sport and call it good? What do you guys think?
I think if you made it a two-handed sport, you'd start losing kind of the charm, you know?
I think you need to keep it as a one-handed sport, but I don't think there is a really good solution to ensure that it stays a one-handed sport. There's already a level of honor, I guess, that goes into the game, that you are always using one hand. You have to be holding the broom, obviously, so that does one thing. One of the other things I thought about too is that they just barely touch on it in the film, but like if you get hit by a bludger, you basically have to go tag up on your goal before you can start playing again.
Right.
And so little things like that too. It's like there's already that just doesn't. That feels like something that's in a kid's game, in a schoolyard game. It doesn't feel like something that's in a professional sport. Mm-hmm. And so little things like that. Yeah, it's just I don't know how you change that up and make it feel more professional.
And still maintain the integrity of the...
I think there's a great opportunity for like branding with brooms. Obviously
definitely.
You don't want to, run around with brooms like you said that you'd be sweeping your kitchen with, but like imagine broomsticks that were colored to be the team colors, even as far as like marketing opportunities are concerned with it. They don't have to be actual functioning brooms, but I think keeping that as true to the franchise as possible will go a long way, just with tweaking it to make it as marketable as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of a sudden you get a Draco Malfoy who comes in and buys everybody brooms for the team, and just gets his way onto the team.
Right.
So
pretty much,
it's the fastest broom ever. It's the fastest sneakers ever.
Right.
These pump. You get a broom that pumps up. So
there you go. I like it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those like I think that's going to be the catch-22 because losing the brooms. I mean, in a sense, it almost ceases to be Quidditch at that point.
Right.
That's the thing that really makes it in the Harry Potter world that we've translated over. And the brooms do serve a real purpose in the game. But I think they're always going to struggle. I don't want to say always. I think at least for now, they're going to still struggle with the whole nerd concept as long as they have to run around with the broom. So but you can't lose it because you lose, I think, really a lot of the integrity of the game.
And I don't know how else you like try to keep them one-handed. Like you can't like strap somebody's hand behind their back to ensure they only use one hand because, like you said, it's super full contact. So you at least need that arm to be able to brace yourself if you're falling. Could you imagine, how many broken arms there would be just from having people's arms strapped back so they couldn't use that second hand? And the game would be going too fast. You would never be able to call any penalties on somebody using a second hand. So I think holding on to something is the best way to keep that rule in place.
And it's not just holding on to something, it's holding on to something that you can't actively use in the game.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Right. Not everybody's running around with a little bludger staff, to
like, I mean, it'd be one thing, so you give them little brooms they don't have to hold between their legs, but then they start whacking people with them. It's like, no, that's not going to work either.
Right. A whole new level of foul right there. And here's the thing. I mean, we started off kind of saying this is how new sports are created, is people start putting stuff together like this. Who's to say that in 100 years, as you get a competition committee and a rules committee and all of these things, that maybe those things do change. Maybe they decide, hey, listen, we actually can make this a two-handed game and lose the brooms, and here's how we're going to adjust for that. Like I think in rugby there's something like you can only run the ball forward, you can't pass it, like you have to pass it laterally or behind you. Like you'll start instituting rules that don't actually exist in J.K. Rowling's version of Quidditch, just to make it a little bit more of a legitimate deal, and then again you go back to the idea of, have you lost the idea of what it is to be Quidditch? Because the other challenge is that you bump up against a lot of what the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball is it now becomes a business and it's no longer the game. It's no longer what we love, and I think that's probably the danger in that, but it's also, I think it's got to be a give and take if that's where Quidditch is going to go through the ages. Oh, I don't know.
Look at that.
What about that? Well, guys, I think that's going to kind of get us. So I'll wrap it up. Do you guys have any final thoughts about Quidditch and football and making it a real sport, or anything you guys kind of want to throw out there as we wrap this up?
We live in an age where esports is now being shown on ESPN. Kids playing League of Legends and other video games and making millions of dollars doing so. Quidditch isn't that far off from that kind of stuff. So like, to anybody that like may think it's still silly and it's still kind of ridiculous, just look at the things that are actually making millions of dollars out there, like with sponsorships and marketing and whatnot, and just know that like things happen quickly sometimes. So
yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. It's somewhere between esports and the Little League Finals World Series, in my opinion. It's like things that I wouldn't necessarily think should be on ESPN, but they are.
Yeah, like the World Series of poker.
And I mean, this is already a college sport, like we said. Yeah. So it's like there's plenty other college sports that are televised. Go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it is as of right now, it is a legitimate school club, which makes it an intramural sport. Like that's full on what it is. And I've seen intramural sports play. I think it's on the deep ESPN channels, like ESPN 4 or something, when they're
the Ocho,
right, when they're begging for programming. But you certainly could see that, and I mean, my word, when a network picks up on something and they're going to drop, so many television cameras, and all of a sudden you've got to have a truck in the back somewhere, and you start looking at some stuff that's quite legit, and where it could go. Well, guys, I want to thank you for taking some time out. I know you guys actually have an episode of Tales from Godric Hollow to record that I cannot wait to get to listen to, because I am itching to get on with, I think it's this week, it's chapters 3 and 4 of Prisoner of Azkaban that you guys are doing. Is that right?
You got it.
That's
you
correct.
got it.
Yep.
Oh, see, I'm on it. I'm right here with you guys. Guys, once again, thank you so much. The podcast is Tales from Godric's Hollow. You can find that on iTunes. Make sure you guys go over there, rate them, leave them a review, join them. You can go back all the way to episode 1 and just listen through and catch up. Like it's not too late. You guys, you do a really good job of keeping this like evergreen, so that no matter when somebody discovers the podcast, they can really just start from the beginning and come along. They don't have to all of a sudden, just catch right up, although they certainly could. But they could do that. And, if you do, then you will join in the pain that we all experience of having to wait a week in between watching this. That can get painful. You're like, oh my gosh. So Josh, let me ask you this, just kind of offline. So you're the muggle of the show.
Correct.
As if you're like you're looking forward, I'm assuming you've probably already read the chapters for tonight, that you're going to be going through, but where are you thinking Harry Potter's going to go? If I could, if you are you there yet at all of thinking how it's going to unfold or what's happening? Just out of curiosity, what are you thinking, so that we can all snicker along with it?
It's so hard because, like I always say, I have to remain in this bubble for the integrity of the show. I'm not, if I could type into Google right now and pull up an entire Wikipedia on the entire franchise and have this nailed down within a minute. But I have tried to remain as spoiler free as possible, which is insanely hard because Fantastic Beasts just came out and everybody's kind of re-energized in the Harry Potter franchise, and there's all kinds of stuff out there that could easily just ruin everything that we're building here.
Hey, you've done it for the past 20 years. You can make it another 2.
But I didn't care then. That's the problem. I saw the stuff and it didn't mean anything. Now it means the world. I know we have 7 years. I know Harry and Voldemort are kind of doing this tango where they're kind of going back and forth. It will be a continuous story through all 7 years. I don't know. I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to get worried about people dying because things are increasingly getting darker and a little bit more trying for Harry and company. So I'm starting to get nervous about deaths in a way that I didn't think I would care about going into this with characters. So that's tough for me.
Who would be who would be some of the more devastating deaths for you if those were to come out?
If Hagrid dies, I'm done. I quit. I'm just moving on the rest of the show without me. I won't be able to handle it. And that's the problem is I know there's 7 books. I know there's an end point. When people were reading these books when they were coming out, you knew that there was going to be a 7-book arc essentially. But you didn't know the names of the books going forward. I know all the names of the books. I don't remember them all, but I know of them. So, but there's just, I don't know. If Hagrid dies, I'm done. I just quit. If one of the trio dies, I'm going to be devastated. I have fallen so in love with this group of kids, and the Weasleys, the whole family I'm personally attached to in weird ways. I don't know. I don't know where it's going. I'm trying to go slow and trying to put one piece together at a time. I don't know what the final jigsaw puzzle looks like. I really don't know where it's heading.
Well, Josh, just based off of that, and Matt, I don't think this gives away anything. I think, Josh, I can appropriately say that you are exactly where you should be as somebody who is unspoiled to the franchise, reading through for the first time. You're everything you're experiencing right now in your journey is exactly what you should be experiencing right now. And that's just a lot of fun to see. And just one little quick tidbit. I think one of my favorite things from the last book, Josh, was when it was in the later chapters, and all of a sudden you realized what the artwork on the front of the book meant. You're like, it was right in front of me. I was in my hand the entire time. And I can't wait to hear as you look at more artwork and all of a sudden those things make sense, because it won't make sense until you read it. It's
sure.
just weird. And man, I can't wait to I love getting to follow you on this journey. Matt,
well, I have a little spoiler alert for you.
Okay.
A little spoiler for tonight's show.
Uh-oh.
Exclusive to you now before we even record it. There are things in the last 2 chapters that I stopped and started to think about Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the film I just watched on Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to make connections with that movie with stuff that happened in these 2 chapters. And I don't know how accurate it is, but that's how deep my mind is going in trying to figure out what's going on. Like, I know that movie took place, 60 years before the events of this book, but I'm like, wait, hold on. That's very familiar. I'm pretty sure I just saw something that might relate to this thing. So I don't know where it's going to go, but it's I got some theories tonight.
There you go. Well, I can't wait to hear it. Podcast new episode should be out. You guys usually put it out. What about Tuesday evening, afternoon, somewhere around there?
Yeah, first thing in the morning.
First thing. Well, there you go. Hey, I love it. Well, guys, once again, thank you so much for being on. The podcast is Tales from Godric's Hollow. You guys are on Twitter at Tales from GH. And I believe it's just talesfromgodrichollow@gmail.com to drop you a line on email. Is that correct?
You got it.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this. And for you guys, Bucs fans, I hope you've enjoyed this bonus content episode where we've kind of gotten to explore a different fandom, and it even connects to football in a really weird way. Guys, be on the lookout for the next main episode coming out. Tampa Bay is on a roll as of this recording and cannot wait to see, because we are officially now in the playoffs, and let's just hope that we can stay there as we run down the stretch here of the 2016 season. And until then, guys, I got one thing to say. Let's go Bucs.